Hey everyone, welcome back to Low Budget Logistics, your logistics and supply chain explainer. Today we're going to be talking about something that's not necessarily related to the supply chain, but it is extremely important, and that's forecasting. So forecasting, kind of for those of you who are relatively new to what that thing is, forecasting is a way of looking at data right now and seeing, kind of extrapolating what the future might hold, either because you've already been there and done it, right? In the case of like trying to forecast for peak season, which is where we're at right now. Right, looking at kind of the seasonal jump that you might have, as a percent of your total volume, right? So something like 10 to 20% is a pretty normal amount for an e-commerce jump during peak season. So what you look at is sort of how you're operating right now in a non-peak season, and then add that adder on, and then that's what your forecasting is. So forecasting is not predictions. It's not guessing at the future. It is really, pretty science-based, pretty math-based. And you're looking at data based off of what's happening. Now, you might also, when you're taking a look at your forecasting, you might also look at what marketing you're going to have, look at what sales you're going to have, and that will help you, provide better, closer to reality forecasts. Now, the thing about forecasts is that if you're within 20%, right, if you're 80% correct, you're like a rock star. It's forecasting as a thing is extremely difficult. And it's something that's tough for us all, right? Because we're trying to guess the future based off of what's happening right now. You're trying to guess at intent, what customers are going to look at, and what they're gonna buy. So it is difficult. So if you're close within that 20%, either above or below, you're golden. Now, sometimes I've seen forecasts be like 50% correct. And when that happens, what you'll typically do as a business is try and find something to juice your sales to get closer to that forecast. Because a lot of business is based around these educated guesses that we're making. So it's difficult, but it's super important to know what your budget for the next year might be, and what investments you might be making in the future as far as people or resources or new projects, IT, those types of things. So forecasting is extremely important. It's not really great. It's typically not spot on. And it's very difficult to be, super, super accurate. So like I said, if you're within 20% of what's actually happening, you're a rock star. And everyone who's watching this will agree with me if you're hitting it, especially in the transportation world. But what we use forecasts for, especially in logistics and the supply chain, is to provide an estimate of what we expect to be shipping during a given time period. So if you're a shipping manager like I was, what you're going to be doing is talking to your providers, right? These guys over here or over there, maybe even these guys. I never talk to them. You're going to be talking to your sales reps or your business development people, and you're going to be saying, hey, here's what I expect to be shipping within this week or this month or by day, right? As we get into peak, in the Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, we will be giving by day estimates and forecasts for what volume is going out, right? Because what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, I've got these 10 shippers, and they have given me their forecasts by day, and I will make sure that I have enough trucks to support what they're going to be doing. And what you're typically, right, part of that forecast process is you're going to say, hey, we're going to rerun these numbers every single day, right? I may give my, my UPS or FedEx reps a forecast for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, a month or two out. Really, I've actually given them those forecasts like 6 months ago, and I'm sort of refining them as things happen, because sales change. You might, go from a 50% discount to a 60% discount on Black Friday, and then that will obviously be boosting your numbers, so your forecast will change, and everyone sort of knows that. So what you're going to be doing by day, handing that information over. A month out, you're going to say, hey, this is probably pretty firm. We're not going to really be changing our sales a whole lot. And then what they're going to go do is go find, drivers or trucks out in the market space, and they're gonna have them available for you to meet. Now, what will that look like? A lot of times what you might see if you're a relatively small shipper who does a lot of business during the Black Friday or Cyber Monday period, you may go from a pickup on a smaller truck like this to pick up on a bigger truck like that. Now, what will typically happen, especially if you do a lot of business during the holidays, is that those carriers will stash a trailer like this at your dock. It's called a drop trailer. That's a very industry-wide term. And what will happen is they'll say, "Hey, I will drop you a trailer, and there will be a trailer on your dock at all times. Period. For the next every hour for the next week, or something like that." But what they'll do is they'll do a swap. So they'll bring this tractor element, and they'll bring an empty trailer, they'll put it on a door, and then they'll take that same trailer, they'll unhook, and then they'll swap out trailers, and they'll take that volume away. It's a very easy way of having that sort of constant volume and meeting the capacity that a shipper might need. So you'll typically see changes from smaller trucks to larger trucks. There's a lot of 18-wheelers in the market, and they're pretty interchangeable between one tractor trailer or one tractor and another, and they can be very easily moved. But forecasting kind of right now is interesting because we can see economic expectations based off of what retailers are forecasting. So we've been watching for months. I'm talking about us in the supply chain, have been watching for months the inbound volumes from overseas. Now, retail and e-commerce is not necessarily the biggest driver of the U.S. economy or the worldwide economy, but it is an indicator of what's going on in the economy. What we have seen previously over like the June, July timeframe, where those inbound volumes are going to actually start coming in, is that the economy is relatively soft right now, specifically because we would expect inbound volumes from overseas of manufactured items to be a bit higher than it actually is. So there's two reasons for that. One is that over the last 3 years since the pandemic, inbound volumes were sort of crazy, and there was an outlier where everyone was buying a bunch of stuff because we were all sort of stuck at home and we had a bunch of money sitting around, and so we're buying things online, and the sort of e-commerce trend line went really crazy and it jumped because of those outlier years. So 2020, 2021, 2022 is sort of starting to revert back to the mean, sort of getting back to the relative average that we would see. In 2023, we've had just a massive amount of things that have happened in the world, and especially domestically with inflation kind of going crazy, where that volume has actually reverted back to the pre-COVID trend line. And so all of the carriers that had all these trucks for 2020 and 21, they have excess capacity now. So we're seeing a bunch of what happened over the summer was AMA volumes came in low, and the e-commerce carriers, they really didn't apply as many peak surcharges as they normally would. So the expectation for us in the supply chain is this Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and rest of the peak season will be relatively soft because of the forecasting that we're seeing, and the inbound volumes specifically that are making up that inbound. So it's all super interesting. It gets really detailed. You can, as you sort of go through the forecasting, if you're a shipper, you're gonna forecast extremely closely for Black Friday through Cyber Monday week, and then the rest of the week itself, so the week after Thanksgiving, and you'll be giving by day, sometimes by hour updates of what's going on. And for us in the supply chain, if you're an e-commerce shipper, your forecast will typically be based off of overall volume and then actually what you can produce, because there's sometimes a gap between those two things, right? Because of manpower and labor, those types of things. So you'll give a forecast, and then you'll update those forecasts by day, by hour, sometimes twice a day. You'll let them know, like, hey, we don't need to pick up now. We may need to roll another one. There's lots of communication that happens during that time frame. And so it's a fun time. I really miss being an e-commerce shipper during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's a lot of fun. but we'll get to that in another video. Anyways, it's time for this to be over. So forecasts are important. They're great. There's a lot of communication that goes around, especially right now during the peak season. So, and there's a lot of things that will impact next year based off of what's happening right now. So forecasts are important. It's not necessarily something the supply chain itself produces. Typically, you're given those by some financial planner or analyst, and then you will kind of layer on your information from there as far as, orders, packages, units, those types of things, specific like physical volume as well. So all that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had I hope it was insightful. I hope you have a great day. Thanks.